And I will say, that's a good thing. That is a really good thing. Testing. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing, testing 1, 2, 3. And I will say, that's a good thing. That is a really good thing. Testing. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing, testing 1, 2, 3. And I will say, that's a good thing. That is a really good thing. Prepare for echo. Testing. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing, testing 1, 2, 3. And I will say, that's a good thing. That is a really good thing. I'm trying this. Prepare for echo. Testing. So you're telling me that I didn't do anything? That would stink if that was the truth. Let's try this. Prepare for echo. So you're like this, maybe? Is it really supposed to be like that? Oh, cool, you can see it like that. That's pretty cool. You know what mode it's in. Don't mind me, I'm just trying to set everything up. Hello? 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 Testing. 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 Yeah. Testing. Okay. Right. So I think we're ready to start here. Actually, first, before we start, one moment, please. Trying to get things together. I just got back from an all-day session learning, so I'm unpacking some stuff, and I gotta get out my camera because I brought my camera with me. Although I probably should leave it since I'm not leave it connected to my desktop since I'm not using it anymore. Give me a moment. I'm trying to find it. I know it's here somewhere. Be patient with me, please. I did something with my camera. No, I probably left it downstairs. Well, you know what? That's fine. I'll just have to get it later. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and get started. First, yes. Okay, sorry about that. I need to edit my preferences. Stream output. Okay, I'm gonna have to turn off streaming for a second while I adjust some input settings. $25.60 by $14.40. You know what? Screw it. I'm just gonna do. All right. So hopefully we've got everything set up. Waiting for YouTube to get some feedback. How is 1080p not optimal? Maybe is it expecting me to do it down to 720? What do you mean that's not optimal? I did 1280 by 720.
Hold on a sec. Well, it's not 7. It's not. It's 720p. Goofus. All right. It says I've got a good connection, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Yeah, I know no one's watching right now. Yeah, I lost them. That's fine. So, yeah, I don't know if the 5 hours of video I took earlier is there anymore or not, but I just spent over 4 hours solving problems at DevMountain. You know what? Screw it. I'm just going to go to their LMS, and I'm going to do it again. Wait, do I have VS Code? You know what? Today's going to be a setup day. A setup day is definitely what it's going to be. So I'm going to go here on Visual Studio, and I'm going to download for Mac. Wow, we got good download rates here. I'm glad. Waiting. Okay, now I gotta drag this to the applications folder. Cool. I got Visual Studio Code up and running. Right, so Streamlight. Can you see anything? It's 480p right now. We're just gonna have to roll with it. That's fine. Okay, so I did not commit anything to the repository when I was solving the problem. So I'm gonna have to open up my computer for a second, and I'm gonna have to do that. So I gotta mute the mic for a second, and I'll come back when I'm ready. Okay, I got everything set up. We're good. We should. I should be able to clone it now. So let's make sure my directory's set up. All right, I'm going to clone it down to. I'm going to clone the repository now. Yep, that was right. Then I've got to install Command-Shift-P. Cool. Okay, I got to do. Oh, my brain is so foggy right now. Come on, Jordan. DevMountain. Okay, then I do code dot. And I can close this thing. I can close this thing here. I gotta install live server. Sorry guys, I am not set up today. Nope, not interested, thank you. All right, so we're gonna have this minimized. I'm gonna have this on the left, this on the right. But there's not a snap feature. Practice.js. A minute to set up the window. Make sure I minimize any windows I don't need open. Cool. Okay, so then I can open up another tab. All right. Callback practice. So we're practicing callback functions. So basically what a callback function is a callback function is a function that is passed inside of another function. Basically a list of instructions you're trying to run after a process completes. So, oh yeah, that's why the video, that's why it does that. That was way too long. Okay. So, I was trying to do this myself, and I got stuck. So we were doing unique. So the way he explained that there are a few ways he explained that you could do this. I actually, according to my instructor, I actually did it the worst way possible, and I was like, gee, I thought I was brilliant. Turns out there's a lot I don't know. That's good. Please keep reminding me that there's a lot of things in this world that I do not know, because that means that there's a lot of things in this world that I could know. And by realizing that there's more that I don't know, that'll open me up to learning more. Because if you think you know everything, there's no way you'll be mentally open to learn anything. Because you'll think you've already had everything you need to know. That's why it's good to be challenged. So I think here, we're just going to do the double for loop because the includes method is basically the same because it runs a for loop instead of a for loop. So we're going to have, we're just going to do the remove method. So we're going to make a for loop. And we're going to name it start lower bounds. So we're going to call it lower bounds because that's the place where we're starting. So we're going to do for lower. Actually, we're going to start. We're starting at the end, so we're going to do upper bounds. And because the array indexes are always indexed by 0, and the length property always contains a 1 indexed number, you have to subtract 1 to get it to work. And then inside this for loop, we're going to have to create another, and for this method, we're going to create another for loop. And this one is just going to be scanning. This one's just going to be scanning. So at this point, yeah, okay. At this point, we're going to create another for loop that says, I'm going to just call it search index. And we're going to set it equal to upper bounds. And we're going to subtract 1 from that. What would happen? Yeah. Okay. So if this works correctly, we should be able to do, yes, I just spotted my own mistake. That needs to be a minus minus because we're starting at the end. So we're going to say if array I equals array, oh well, I was used previously, sorry. If array upper bounds is equal to the array at the search index, then we're going to use array.splice, and we're gonna put in the upper bounds. And we're going to remove it at upper bounds. And we're going to tell it we want to remove 1. And if this works correctly, look, it passed. So, and then after you remove, and for this, after you remove everything that you don't need, you need to make sure you call the callback function in here. And that would be how you do it. So that's for problem number 5. Okay. Problem number 6. Write a function called each that takes in an array of names and a callback function. For each name in the array, invoke the callback and pass in the name and the name's index as arguments. So okay. So let's see if I understand this correctly. It's expecting, takes in an array of names and a callback function. For each name in the array, invoke the callback and pass in the name and the name's index. Okay, so you need to call names array. You could do names array dot for each. Element. We need element index. We call callback with element index. And that saves us having to write out an entire for loop because we don't need to know anything else except that. And in fact, for each in of itself is a callback calling a callback. Weird, right? But it gets crazier than that. So we're going to go ahead and commit our changes. Since we have passing tests, we're going to commit this to the repository. Unfortunately, I haven't set up authentication yet. Right, so we're not going to worry about pushing to the remote yet. Okay, we're going to push to the remote after we've solved everything. But as long as we commit and my computer doesn't crash, we'll be fine. We can do that, and it'll since I'm the only one working on this, it'll be fine. So problem number 7. Write a function called getUserById that takes in 3 parameters, an array of objects, users, an ID, and a callback, and searches for the user with a matching ID. When the correct user object is found, invoke the callback method with the user object as an argument. So we need a function called getUserById that takes an array of objects and ID and a callback, and searches for the user with a matching ID. So users is an array of objects. So it doesn't say what to do if you don't find one. So I guess in this example, we do nothing. But in reality, you would want to do something to notify your application that it failed, that it couldn't find anything. So user array, I'm going to use for each. User array dot for each user. If user dot ID equals ID, callback, call the callback, and give it the user that you're looking for. And we pass, sirs and madams. Now, this stream was a lot shorter than it could have been, but we're good, okay? We're good for today. I'm gonna upload whatever I can and shorten it up. And it's not gonna be a lot, so don't expect much today. Okay, expect me to live stream around tomorrow at 1:30 or 2 p.m. I'm going to go ahead and get that scheduled and set up. So that we're good on that. Anyways, guys, if you're watching this, thanks for watching, and I appreciate any feedback you have in the comment section. Thanks and have a great day. Yeah, okay, I need to make sure that I actually go to Google Chrome. This one, and make sure hold on.
Playing from Jordan's iMac.
That's weird. So weird. Part of the technical difficulties, you can go ahead and go now if you're still watching. You don't have to watch me fiddle with random junk. I don't understand. But you're a programmer, Jordan. You know everything. Like I just told you, I don't know everything. In fact, if I did know everything, I wouldn't be here. I would be in some seriously crazy situation where I'd have everything exactly the way I want it. I wouldn't be here spending a lot of money and time trying to figure out how to get a job. You said you want to go to assignment 2? Yeah, I was trying to stop the stream, but if you want me to go to assignment 2, I can do that. I don't have a live dashboard anywhere where I can see it. I'm only on one monitor right now. Okay, if you want me to show assignment 2, that's fine. I'll go ahead and previously and just go over assignments 1 and 2. I'm going to go ahead and clone those. Not Google. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and stop the live server because we don't need that anymore. I don't want to open workspace. I want to open folder. Now, please do keep in mind that if you're a fellow student of mine, a fellow student of this cohort that I'm in right now, it's probably very unwise to copy any scenarios or solutions that I provide you, especially during the projects that we're going to do. Please, please, please do not copy my ideas, not only as your own, but we will all get in a whole lot of trouble, okay? For you, everyone else out there on the internet, I'm literally showing you my source code. I can't help you with that. But if one of you guys are watching this and you want to steal from me, you're going to get all of us kicked out of the program. So please don't do that. There's no open folder? I don't want to open workspace. Oh, they collapsed that. They said open folder instead. Okay, so needs to be a default. So this is okay. We're going to go over assignment 1 first. Bear with me while I try to explain. What I did here. So the first assignment was about objects, and objects in JavaScript are denoted by objects are this. So an object is this, or an object is this. And when used by themselves in this context. So you create an object you create an object by saying var letter const, a name equals, and then you use object like this or object like this. And each object can have properties. They call them properties on it. And you define a property by giving it a name, and you put a colon instead of an equal sign, and it can be any data type you want, including another object. So the task for problem 1 was to create an object called me, give it a name and an age, and then you need to call the alert function for the web browser that says me.name. And I guess I'll start the spec runner. So when you've completed this project, you should get the name, Jordan Morris, and we'll wait on this for a second, okay? So if you did it correctly, you should get an output on your web browser that has a box that says the name you put here. So for the second problem, you needed to create a favorite things object. And it needed to have your favorite band, your favorite food, person, book, movie, and holiday. And was pretty much the same thing up here as it was for number 1. You could also use the other syntax I have up here. Now, the point of the second exercise was to understand that you could add properties onto a valid object after you've created the object. And you can use that you can do that by using dot notation, pardon me. So by using dot notation, you can do the object name dot something equals something, and it will work. You could also use bracket notation too. So you could say favorite things, and then a key name, in this case, brand. That works too in this case. But this is the preferred method of doing it. Unless you have special characters inside of your key name, then you have to use bracket notation. So this part is saying that after you've added a property using dot notation, you can change the property, the value of the property, by assigning it after you've created it. So that was the point of problem number 2. So problem number 3 was you have to create an object called backpack, and then you were creating a key basically called item, and you're saying it's the first pocket. And then you were saying that the first item, you were creating a property inside a backpack using bracket notation. And you were doing that by using the value of item inside of bracket notations a backpack and saying that that's the chapstick. And you were also saying that the color is black. So this below would also look like that. But the benefit of doing it this way is that if you need a key that would change somewhere down the line, or maybe you don't know the exact value of the key, doing it this way makes it easier, because you can't dynamically do a dot notation, but you can dynamically assign a property to an object using bracket notation. So for this problem here, on problem number 3, they were mentioning about how if you tried to alert an object, it would just give you object. So this is the part where this thing over here came into play. From my experience with JavaScript, you can use the JSON module to take an object and turn it into a string that can be displayed that way. A lot of times, that's the only way you can get an object to actually print, unless you're using something like console.log or a third-party function. So I did both. So I said alert JSON.stringify backpack, which turns the object into a string that can be displayed here. So if you've done everything right up to this point, this is what you should get. The first pocket is chapstick. The color is black. And the color is black. It matches up here. Cool. This will be here in a minute. Oh, this is important in a minute. So we're moving on to problem number 4. So in this problem, he wanted to change his name and his email address without modifying the object above. And if you go back up to here, where for problem number 2, where we're adding properties and changing them later, all you need to know is to use dot notation or bracket notation, and you set it to a new value by giving it a new value that's a string. So that's how I solved problem number 4. For problem number 5, the first part says create an empty object called method collection. So I'm choosing to use let here. Doesn't matter in this case, but I'm saying let method collection equals, and this means object. A good habit, in my opinion, is when you're trying to write code, think about what you're writing. I think in this context, I think of this as object. So that'll be a good habit to get in mind, in my opinion. So the next part says, now add 2 methods, functions which are properties on objects, to your method collection object. One needs to be called alert hello, which alerts hello, and another needs to be called log hello, which logs hello to the console. So if you go back up to here where you added a property with dot notation here and you set it to something, you can do the same thing with functions. And if you attended class yesterday, they would have let you, they would have clued you in on function expressions. So before we take an aside, I used a function expression to do this. So I called the method collection and then the property name I wanted to give the function. And then I said function, open, close braces, and I said alert hello. And it's the same thing for log hello, except you use console.log. And now it says you need to call your alert hello and log hello methods. And from here, you just call the name of the object using dot notation, and then the name of the method or function in open close parentheses. So for problem 6, says create a function called makePerson, which takes in a name, birthday, and social security number as its parameters. Return a new object with all of the information you just passed in. Well, from my experience as a JavaScript developer, but limited experience, we created, if you remember how we went up here earlier, where we had to create an object here. So you may be familiar with this syntax that says let backpack equals object. Well, in this context, what this does actually is creates a new object and then assigns it what's called a reference to backpack. So just think of a reference is like your variable name is referring to. When the computer asks for backpack, it's going to figure out what backpack is by looking at an address in memory. And that address in memory is called a reference. If that made you lost, don't worry about it. That's not important. But it's important that when you're dealing with JavaScript objects that you understand that deep down inside of the virtual machine that is JavaScript, backpack is really what backpack really is a string in memory that's a memory address, and that's called a pointer. And that memory address is what contains our object. So what we're really doing here is we're creating an object and we're saying, hey, this object lives somewhere in memory, and we're going to let backpack know that's where it is. So I went off on a bit of a tangent, but the part you need to get away from here is in this scope, a return open curly brace, close curly brace means return empty object. And you can put properties inside of an object like this by going up here and doing the same thing you did here, except the difference is that if the property name you're trying to give the object has already been created in the block scope that you're currently in, for instance, name, birthday, and social security number, instead of typing name, you can omit the second part after the colon and just put name. And as long as name and the other properties are valid in the scope, this will continue to work. If somehow between here and here name got deleted, it wouldn't work anymore. But then you would just get undefined anyways if you did it the other way. So this is another shorthand way of doing it. And I actually, this is the problem number 7 for me was the same as problem number 6. So it says, problem number 7 says, create a function called makeCard, which takes in a card number, an expiration date, and a security code to make a credit card object. Return that object so that whenever you invoke makeCard, you get a brand new credit card. And that's just fancy word for number 6. You can do the same thing here. You could also use the object, the word object too, if you wanted to, but I did this one the same way. So that's how I did number 1 through 7. Go ahead and revert files, revert file. So quickly, we're going to go over assignment number 2 real quick. I know Thanks for going through this with me. And I appreciate understanding that it was a bit out of order, because I'm basically having to redo everything because I live streamed it earlier and it didn't save. So I'm going to reopen this folder and open number 2. So number 2 is arrays. Arrays are, for me, arrays are dead simple. A high-level overview is an array is just a list, similar to a to-do list. Similar to a to-do list, an ordered to-do list. It doesn't really matter what the data is in JavaScript. JavaScript doesn't care as long as it's a valid type. So you have a list that's like do laundry, right? And you have another one that's like, I don't know, eat lunch, and then another one that's like talk to friends or something. Yeah, so there you go. That's it. That's a list, right? So the same thing could be accomplished in JavaScript by understanding that a list in JavaScript is called an array. They're interchangeable, but the jargon in most languages is usually array, but they are also referred to as lists. Don't worry about that. Sorry, I'm a bit. So you create a new array in JavaScript simply by using the bracket notation like this by itself. Okay, not this. This creates a new object, creates a new array. And the bracket notation like this, in this context with nothing else involved in the statement that you're in, creates a new array whether it's been assigned to a variable or not. Okay? Just know that a bracket notation right next to each other by itself creates a new array. Now you can't, if you're wanting to create an array, you can't do this. This means I want you to get the value of something in this array called A. Well, array A doesn't, unless you create array A or object A in this case it's array. If you try to do this to create an array, this will throw an error. If perchance that you do happen to try to do the A, and this is actually called dereference, but we're just going to call get item out of A with anything in it, a key or a number, and that happens to be an object, and that property doesn't exist. A of anything, if anything doesn't exist on A, then this will return undefined. So if you're trying to, anywhere in your code, get an item out of an array or an object and you're getting undefined, then you need to check whether or not the object you're trying to get it out of has that key or property in it. And you need to check your key to make sure your key is correct, because sometimes misspelling errors happen. So in this case, you would create an array that would equal the list above by saying bracket notation, and then the first item on the list would just be do laundry. Just know that this will be the first item on the list. The 1, 2, 3 doesn't matter here yet, but it will later. And the second item will be eat lunch. And the third item will be talk to friends. And you don't have to put any numbers here because JavaScript knows that this is the first item in the list, this is the second item in the list, and this is the third item in the list. But if you switched around that order, it would start from the top and end at the bottom. So if you move this around and you put number 3 here at number 1, then it would be out of order. So right now, we're just going to do this. So right now, we've created an array, but we haven't assigned it to anything. So we need to make sure, if we're going to reference this later, we need to make sure that we assign it to a variable. But it's important for you to understand that the array isn't created by this. The array is created by this bracket notation. And that you're just pointing example at this array in memory by using the equal sign. You're saying that there's an array that looks like this on a variable, at a variable called example. You could also do the same thing by creating an array similarly to what you would do in JavaScript and with objects, and you could say example 1 equals, give me a second, gotta fix up the syntax for a minute. You could do example 1 equals this, and you could do the same thing for example 2. Second. And the same thing for example 3. You could do talk to friends. And that's the same thing as we did before, except it's just a lot less typing, except there's an error here. Okay, I made this error not really on purpose, but it's going to demonstrate why this is important. You see, arrays, they don't start counting at 1. They start counting at 0 because someone decided that it was probably when electronics were being created. You know, computers naturally speak ones and zeros. 0 means off. So probably at some point they decided that to follow how computers work electronically. Not every language does it that way, though, but most do. So it's important for you to understand that this list up here, implemented correctly in JavaScript, will start at 0. So you'll take, if you're doing a to-do list and translating it into an array, you'll want to take where you start here and subtract 1 from it, and that will be the start of your list. It's the same thing when you're talking about the length of an array. So when hold on a second. So when an array is empty, it is said to have a length of 0, right? So array.length works here because it's indexed by 0, but the length is 0, right? There's nothing there, okay? But here, you have one item on the array, because it'll essentially be like this, right? So if you wanted to get the first item in the array, you wouldn't do array 1. You would do array 0. It's weird, but remember that it starts counting at 0. Even though there's one thing here, you would do of 0. So it's important to know to access arrays, you have to make sure that you do array and then array.length -1 for the end of the array. Array of 0 for the first item in the array, and you need to understand that hold on a second. You need to understand that the relationship between accessing arrays with their length. The relationship between accessing the arrays is the length of the array -1. I hope that you understand that part, because that will help. That will reiterate everything in this module. Simply speaking, an array in memory, an array for JavaScript is basically a list, and the list can contain, in JavaScript, the list can contain any kind of data type. It doesn't matter what it is, as long as it's a valid data type, and that you create an array using the bracket notation, and that you assign it to a variable using this. But that this creates it, not this. So problem number 1 says create a function named first and give array as an argument. Return the first item in the given array. So if you go up here, the relationship between accessing arrays is the length of the array -1. Well, we don't know the length of the array. So we always know that to access the first element in the array, so we want to get the first element. So you do 1 - 1. And that equals 0. So that's why you do it. You want to get the first element, and the relationship between the length you're trying to get and the value you need to put in is 1 - 1, 0. So you return the name of the array, bracket notation, and then 0. For problem number 2, it says create a function named last that is given array as an argument. Return the last item in the given array. So for last, there's 2 ways you can do this. I suggest you do it this way for now until you understand. But up here, when we said that the relationship between accessing an array is the length of the array minus 1, well, arrays have a property on them, a variable or property on them called length, right? So you do name of array, and then call its dot length, not call, but use its dot length property. Now it's important to understand that length is not a function. If you try to do this, it throws an error. So it throws in a reference error that says length is not a function. So please keep in mind that length is a property, not a function, at least on arrays. So now that we understand that you can get the length of an array by using dot notation and length, you call array.length. But because the relationship between what you need to put in to get something out of an array and the length is the length minus 1, you have to do array length minus 1 here. So return array of array.length minus 1 is the solution here that they're probably looking for. Now there's a second way you can do this. Arrays also have another method, which is a function on them called pop. So pop takes the last element off the array, literally. The difference is that pop modifies the array itself. Here, we're just returning a copy of what was here in this position. But here, we're calling pop, which removes the element from the list, modifying the array, and returning the last item on the list. If you're not going, if you're in a situation where you're not returning the list, you could do this. But this is a convenient way of doing it too. Keep in mind that this is going to crop up more later, that all objects, arrays, and including arrays, are what's called referred to by reference. Meaning when you pass an array into a function, you're not getting a copy of the data, you're getting the original source of the data. So modifying array here would modify array outside of the caller, outside of this function. But it would do it in the scope of the calling function. Please understand that, because that's hard. If I use array pop and I call last pop, and I give it an array that says 1, 2, array pop internally would remove this element here. And if I tried to reference it again later, it would be 1. But if I used function But if I used function last and did it this way, you need to understand that this array would not change because you're copying, not modifying. You're not, they call it destructing. So please keep that in mind, that later down in your code, when you use functions that modify arrays, keep in mind that you're modifying the original array that you passed into the function and not a copy of it. But that only applies in the scope that the function was called in. Keep that in mind. That'll make sense later. So problem number 3. Create a function called looper that is given family as its only argument. Loop through the given array and alert every item in the array. So we create a function declaration. I used a function declaration here. And I said function looper with an argument of family. And what it wants you to do is it wants you to call alert every time for every value in this array. It's important to distinguish that because I thought earlier that it just wanted me to call alert once somehow. I don't know how. But it's important to understand that just calling alert 0 wouldn't do that. So you have to use a loop here. You can use a traditional for loop, or you can use array.forEach. It's basically the same thing right now. So that's how I solved it. You call alert, family, I, but you have to create a loop. And it doesn't matter which order you do it in. It's this, well, the tests will say it matters. So let's see, for looper, yeah, this one, okay, the spec runner does matter. They're calling the items in order from first to last. They're checking the order you're doing it in. So in this case, it does matter. Sorry. Problem number 4. You have an array with letters A, B, C, D, and E. Write a function called reverse looper that's given letters as its only argument. Loop backwards, starting at the end of the letters array, alerting every item in the array. So again here, I went with a function declaration and I gave it an argument of letters. And to start at the end of an array, remember, the relationship between the array, between the length of an array and the number you need to use to get something out of an array is its length minus 1. Because of that fact, we start here at length. If you try to get an item out of an array by using array.length, you will get undefined. If if you get undefined here, it'll cause some interesting behavior. You'll get alert, and instead of a value, you'll get undefined here in the browser. So, okay. Sorry about that tangent. Okay. So we start at the end of the array by using letters.length minus 1. And because we're counting backwards, we need to stop at the start of the array. So you always get the start of the array by using 0 because arrays start at 0, right? And because you're counting backwards, you want to subtract I. From there, you just call alert letters I. That's how I did it. If you've got any questions, please write them down in chat. I'm not looking at them right now, but as soon as I'm done reviewing the basic problems here, I'm not going to review the extra ones. So that's going to take too long, and it's late. It's 8 o'clock. I might review the extra practice problems later. So we got one more to review, and then ask whatever questions you have in the chat, and I'll look at them as soon as we're done with this next one. So for problem number 5, we have an array of numbers. And it said, do not edit the code below, edit the code. And it says, write a function called even finder that is given numbers as its only argument, nums as its only argument. Sorry. Return an array that contains the even numbers from the nums array. So I used a function declaration, here called nums. And because we're going to be taking elements from a source array, and you don't know whether or not you need the original array to be intact, you use a target array like this. So to create an array, remember, you create an array by using this notation, and then you store it to a variable by using this. All right, and because we're going through the array, you can use either for each or a for loop. And you can go forwards. In fact, for this one, they want you to go forwards, if I remember correctly. Even finder should exist, be a function, return an array, and with only even numbers. Actually, no. This one, they're not measuring order. So they're not measuring order with this one, so it's okay. So something you need to understand about computers. In order to solve this problem, you need to know the difference between even and odd. So we need to take an aside here, and you need to, if you're not listening, you need to listen right now, because this is important. You need to know that in order to figure out if something is even or something is odd, that the fact that it is even means that it is divisible by 2. So I'm going to write out these comments here. They didn't go over this in class, but you need to know if it's even. If it's even, it's divisible by 2. So or in a way that where your number divided by 2 is 0, exactly 0, means even. And if your number divided by 2 is not equal to 0, e.g., it's greater than 0 in any form or fashion, or less than 0 in any form or fashion, then it's odd. So by this stretch here, if you go back to math class, you need to understand the concept of remainder. Remainder means how much is left over after you divide. So here, you're testing for a remainder. The concept of even says it's even if it's divisible by 2. Divisible, evenly divisible means that dividing by 2 gives you a 0 remainder. So in JavaScript, in many programming languages, you check for the remainder of a division operation by using what's called a modulo or modulus operator. And in JavaScript, a modulo operator is the percent sign, right? Is a percent sign. So you use this by saying any number you're going to use it like you're dividing any number modulo any number equals the remainder. And you'll get the remainder out of that. So I might have to use real Chrome tools for this. Sorry about that. I'm trying to open Chrome DevTools. Give me a second. I'll get it here in just a second. More tools. Developer tools. We're going to go over to the console here, and we're going to throw out some examples. So we know that 2 divided by 2 is 0, right? Because 2 is divisible by 2 and gives no remainder. So, and we also know that 4 divided by 2 is evenly divisible. It gives you 2. There's no 2.1, 2.2, no, it's 2. So if you did 2 modulo 2, you would get 0. If you did 4 modulo 2, you would get 0. And you would get 0 because there is, even though 4 divided by 2 is 2, it's evenly 2. It's not 2.1 or 2.4 or 1.6. It's exactly 2. You could, the division could be 1, but as long as it's divisible by 2, you'll get 0. So that's how we know when something is even. And let's go over here, another tangent, and go over here and actually perform these operations so you know what JavaScript is doing for you. So we're going to do 4 modulo 2, and that gives you 0. We're going to do 2 modulo 2, and that gives you 0. Now we're going to do 1, which is an odd number, modulo 2, and that gives you 1. You have 1 left over. You can't evenly divide it. We're going to do 3 modulo 2, and you're going to get 1. And then we do 4 modulo 2, and you get 0. That's evenly divisible. 5 modulo 2 equals 1. Same thing for 6, and 7, and 77, and 75, and 73, and 9565225. So, given that mathematical fact with JavaScript, you can check if something is even by saying number modulo, does number modulo 2 equal 0? And usually it will evaluate this first. so you don't have to worry about that. But yeah, okay. So that's why I say if nums, so as we're iterating over this array, that's why I'm saying if the number at the current index divided by 2 has no remainder, ergo it's even. You push the even number onto the array, and then after all that, you return it. So I'm going to go ahead and open up Stream Chat here. Here we go. Right. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, you can't see anything. Okay, let's go over that again. If you're still watching, I'm so sorry, I didn't realize you couldn't see anything. Let me go ahead and increase that font, increase the UI size. It's pretty big on my screen. So I'm going to keep Stream Chat over here. Pop out chat. Cool. Okay, we're going to pop out chat. I'm going to keep this open for a little bit. If you're listening, yes. This is assignment 2. So I guess I'm going to keep going for a bit. Like I've explained what I needed to. I don't know if you got it, but I'm just gonna keep this on for a bit and ask me questions. Don't know if you're still here or not. Broken Notes, are you still here right now? No, I'm not getting. I'm not getting a response. Broken Notes. But if you want to DM me, I got to wrap this up. I got to wrap this up so I can edit the video and make it easier to watch because it's a 1-hour video. I gotta jump cut this video and put it up on YouTube. Just know that when I jump cut, I'm gonna put this video up live exactly as it is, minus live exactly as it is. It'll be live. I'm gonna cut up the video and play it in 1x, and then I'm gonna jump cut the video in a way where my pauses have been shortened. So hopefully that'll help or reduce the amount of watching you have to do. Unfortunately, I don't have time to provide timestamps at this moment, so we're going to have to go from there. Yeah, I haven't heard anything from you, Broken Notes, in a few seconds. So I'm going to go ahead and end the stream and get it edited. So, like I said, if you got any questions later, please DM me. Send me a comment or something, and we'll get it sorted out later. All right. So that's it. Thank you for watching. I'm also going to be trying to stream tomorrow at around 1:30 p.m. Probably 2. I'll be working, so I won't be available to ask questions during the stream, but we'll go from there. If you have any questions, you're probably going to have to DM me during the stream because I'm not going to answer them. I'll probably have to look at them later. Other than that, yeah. All right. So let's see if I can figure out how to stop this thing. All right, here we go. Yep. All right. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye now.